Welcome back, everyone. I promised something truly amazing, and the reality is, it didn't quite go the way I planned. What started as an attempt to hunt down the Thrumbo there turned into a rather prolonged endeavor to get several things accomplished. The first thing that needed to be done was a place to store the meat. It would not last long in a heated space, so a cool environment was necessary. I set about building a freezing area immediately, and the results were somewhat promising. Before I could get too far into that, I ran into the problem that I had so many little details that I wanted just right. I paid attention to the prisoners, mostly Tara. If I could convert her back, I could begin my true purpose here. Then I noticed something strange about this creature, this cat beast. It has some unusual ability, and I must admit I spent rather some amount of time considering its implications in the fullest extent. I did a couple of tests to see how well this creature responded. Once I had decided it was worth holding on to, I focused my priorities a little too much on this creature. By the time I turned around, the Thrumbos had departed. It is unfortunate because I genuinely did want to hunt them down to extinction. As you can see, they have already departed, however, and there is nothing I can do to bring them back. A true tragedy. Still, I spent time managing the prisoners. That was necessary, whether I enjoyed it or not. It took some time to ensure the creature was no longer able to escape. It is regrettable to have learned that there is actually a far simpler solution to this particular problem. Little did I realize how simple it would be to restrict this creature and prevent it from ever escaping. Still, I did gain some considerable medical knowledge. I realized there was something interesting about its stats. In theory, this creature would not die, as it has the deathless trait, and would simply cease activity if it was not fed regularly. It was already low on food due to some mismanagement by myself. This is something that will eventually come back to haunt me in time, but for now I seem to have it well under control. No more food for them. It was at this point I realized the Thrumbos had gone. But it barely mattered. This prize was worth far more than a simple Thrumbo. Oh, he was valuable indeed. With food stored in a freezer, and with him contained, I would have most of the things I would need for my ultimate project. Soon I would be able to create the ultimate being. Delicious. Unfortunate it did mean that I lost my Thrumbo, her prey, and I was forced to find... Oh, what is this? One of my people have been attacked by the bugs. They have grown irritating out there. I am not sure why they are constantly harassing my people, but they do. I also have this moment to consider what to do with the camels, and I decide to sell the older ones in order to free up my resources and also reduce the population growth. An ideal way to generate a little revenue without that much work. It took several days, but eventually I had the thing I wanted. Tara was more or less ready to be converted back to our faction. I would need a more comfortable room for her to rest in, as I did not have a more efficient way to convert someone to my own faction. This was adequate enough. As I was beginning to build some of the basic resources for a civilization, I would have the ability to take care of many problems. The food issues were becoming a problem, but thankfully my little pet was working sufficiently well. I was in the process of converting housing to a more comfortable setup and arranging for Tara to join our fold again when I made some interesting discoveries in the psi-casting tree for puppeteering. Most interesting were some of the abilities that were coming down the line. Subjugation was an immediately obvious one. If I could grab it quickly, it would allow me to easily convert her. But I saw this puppet ability, and I must admit, it perked my interest considerably. What could it do, and how did it have limits? What were its limits? Even if I could only control a couple puppets, it would be a useful addition to my ability. Being able to summon them and swarm your enemy with them is just a cherry on the top. But once I realized you could use them as bombs, it was even better than that. Oh, this could be a truly interesting tree. Very, very interesting indeed. Some of the abilities were a little less than useful, I admit. But even then, they were definitely worth considering. It wasn't long before I was immediately set upon by raiders. If I didn't have my psycho there, I must admit I would have been in considerable trouble. Fortunately, I was able to handle them relatively well. I tried using some of my more widespread abilities, but the enemy just didn't cooperate that well. The lack of any real structure or plan definitely was a problem here. Still, my 3 main pawns are quite capable of handling themselves. Shortly after, we were joined by this fellow, Squid. He immediately proved himself useful by mining up a piece of stone no one else had bothered to touch for some time, and he proved to have several other useful aspects to him. I considered keeping him around for some time, but there eventually began to be little incidents involving him. He would quickly wear me thin. But fortunately, winter was over, and spring was now truly on its way. I planted harvests, potatoes and rice, to quickly grow some meaningful food, and then I set about preparing something for the camels to make sure they would have enough to survive as well. With this done, I had everything, it seemed, truly under control for the time being. I find it rather interesting that the one time I never actually intended to use a quest to gain a sanguiphage. I actually have them. Many times I have tried playing this game, and never before have I actually seen it present me this option. Useful, I suppose, but rather irritating if I must be honest, that it shows up now. Still, the fort seems to be doing well enough, and we seem to be having enough supplies. Regular hunting expeditions will keep us fed until we have our first crop, and then we should be more than prepared for anything that comes in the next seasons. A full yield of corn will do more than enough to get me ready. Around this time, we are dealing with Squid in a rather efficient way, but I'm also trying to prepare for taking on the Thrumbos, and also trying to make sure that I reduce my hostility towards any other faction. Getting rid of Squid is a simple solution, but I feel that it is now time to strike against the Thrumbos, something I've been wanting to do for some considerable time. When I thought I had everything ready, I struck at them, setting one of the Thrumbos ablaze and using my hunters to harry it and bring it down. Unfortunately, it seems Randy had a different plan for me altogether. He sent raiders towards me, and the problem is that I just used almost all of my energy on the Thrumbo. Not only that, though, it seemed at this time that the Thrumbo had set flames to that one area over there, and then one of these guys decided to start chucking firebombs and grenades at me. I was forced to withdraw because I cannot handle actual explosives. Unfortunately, Terra is completely useless in this situation. My pawns go down, but I do eventually manage to bring them to a stop. Fortunately, even as it feels like everything is falling to ruin, I realize that it doesn't have to end here. I can find a way to survive. I just have to manage it just a little bit more carefully. One last enemy, and I would be done. Come on, you can do it. And I won. Excellent. And then I jerked awake with a start and realized that Squid was still alive, and the Thrumbo was healthy and fair. What had happened? A dream? It must have been a dream. That's the only explanation I can think of. Still, it had been so real, so genuine. I cannot imagine it being an entire dream. I look at the Thrumbos and I decide perhaps this is not the time to try and deal with them. Perhaps I should wait a little bit. And so I let this opportunity pass me by. For whatever reason, it would seem that Randy had only desired to send me those incidents when I try attacking the Thrumbos. For whatever reason, they seem protected by them. Interestingly enough, Tara, a pacifist, kind of has a strange mental incident and hurts people. I'm not exactly sure what to do about it. She has been recently reclaimed from a disastrous philosophy, and we need her to be cooperative with our people. It takes a while, but eventually I get her to see the benefits of being on a good side with us. Soon she's in a real relationship with Axel, and they seem well on their way to being not just a couple, but fully married. Excellent. It was a little difficult, I must admit, for a high mate to be encouraged this direction, but it seems that I've finally found success. I consider my research options and decide where I should be applying my resources. I have many of the things I need in the long run, but the strange behavior I've been getting from Randy makes me nervous. For the most part, nothing interesting happens. He throws me small attacks by random packs of animals, and seldom any more than that. But at the same time, if I were to be seriously increasing the wealth and the size of my colony, I would surely draw the ire of Randy sooner than later. It would require considerable time and energy to ensure that nothing goes too wrong here. I must make sure everything goes smoothly, so I take steps to ensure that we are properly protected. I do not like the idea of hiding behind a wall. It is boring. However, my goal is not to have dramatic battles, especially as Randy does not provide me them. It is during this time that Randy strikes me with a toxic fallout, something I did not expect. I believed these only occurred near other zones of pollution. Apparently, I must be closer than I realized. Regardless, it lasts for a considerable amount of time. My animals grow sick, my people hide underground. Not much happens for the rest of the season, and I eventually end it by selling my camels. Little did I know Randy would end this horror the moment I gave up on maintaining my herd of camels. Apparently Randy dislikes them as much as I do. The next season isn't much better. I spend what time I have with the remainder of the growing season and focus entirely on rice. By the time winter sets in its earnest, I was able to successfully save some of the corn from the harvest and grow a considerable batch of rice. I wasn't sure it would be enough to feed my rather large fort. I have quite a few people in here compared to the amount of food I have, and I feared it would not be enough to survive. Still, there's not a lot I can do. Once winter is here, it's impossible to grow the crops in any meaningful way. It was not until the mid of December that I got my first significant boost to biomass. Fortunately, I also had a Thrumbo arrive, so I could hunt it to extinction. This time, thankfully, nothing happened. Unlike the other attempts, it was just a simple takedown. You hit the Thrumbo with lightning, you get it to run around, you plug it full of holes, and eventually it dies. I honestly wonder if Nana could have taken the thing on in a direct head-to-head fight, but I wasn't sure if that's a good idea or not. Regardless, it took a little work to heal everyone up, but at this time, I was ready to try out that ability, this puppet move of mine. I have plenty of prisoners, and I believed that it would work if I could just get it right. The pig person, Popo or whatever, I believe she had some injuries preventing her from being recruited. Never did work well. But anyway, I get this Wookiee person to properly be brain leached and conditioned. Then all I would need to do is have Nana train up her psi power to boost the taking over of his mind. At the time, I had no idea what this is, as I had not explored the possibilities at all. I simply didn't know what it would do. With a quick cast, I had the effect underway, and I quickly noticed several things. He genuinely takes all of the non-genetic traits of the puppeteer. An interesting possibility. He also learns all their skills, and I quickly wonder, does his skills transfer from one to the other? It doesn't make him magically as powerful as Nana, of course, because Nana is far stronger. But we are able to subdue the other prisoner riots with relative ease now, even if that is all he does. But I see the possibility where I can use him to perform all the daily tasks that I would normally have my vampire do. It's not much, I will admit, but it is something, and having someone else do them saves me considerable time. The last thing I do before I end this season is change the path of my people to that of the worship of the blood feeders. As Nana is a vampire, I figured there would be no problems. Strangely enough, it is a problem, as I did not actually give her the ability to directly feed blood from somebody. She must tap from them, creating a bag, and then feed from that blood. So she's not actually a vampire. She's some sort of hemophilic creature, or something along those lines. I'm not exactly sure what to do about that, but it is a thing, and it actually causes me problems, strangely enough. Still, it is the end of the season, and I am happy to see that toxic fallout gone, as well as those cursed camels. Hopefully my luck will go better from here.